Na mtazamaji, kama unavyotizama ni shughuli ya kusahili wale ambao wameweza kupeana majina katika kinyang'anyiro au kutafuta kuhifadhi viti vyao katika wadhifa mbalimbali baraza la mawaziri. Na hii leo mtazamaji, ambaye atakuwa anaingia kwenye kikango ni Kipchumba Murkomen, ambaye atakuwa anasailiwa na kutetea ufafu wake kuhudumu kama waziri wa barabara na uchukuzi. Na kama unavyotizama, tunamtarajia aweze kufika wakati wote kutoka sasa. Baadhi ya wale ambao wametwikwa jukumu la kuwapiga msasa wale ambao wanatafuta viti vya mawaziri tayari wamefika hapa. Kamati ya watu 15 wakiongozwa na mwenyekiti ambaye vilevile ni spika wa bunge la kitaifa Moses Masika Wetangula. Kumbuka kwamba Murkomen amekuwa akihudumu kama seneta na mtazamaji, vilevile alikuwa kiongozi wa walio wengi katika bunge la seneti. Kwa hivyo hii leo atakuwa anajaribu kuonyesha kwamba anaweza kutoa kiti hicho. Kwa hivyo tunamtizama tayari ameshafika na ataanza na kukula kiapo kwamba lolote atakalosema litakuwa ni kweli. Mtazamaji.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chairman.
Shall the clerk administer the oath? You have a choice between the Quran, the Bible, and affirmation depending on your faith.
I, Onesimus Kipchumba Murkomen, do hereby swear to testify on all matters in question and tell this committee the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Honorable Murkomen, this is a committee of the National Assembly set out under the standing orders, the law and the constitution to conduct confirmation hearings, or vetting as is commonly called, of all persons nominated by His Excellency the President to hold certain offices, in particular the office of the Cabinet Secretary. The committee is chaired by the Speaker of the National Assembly, yours truly here, and has all these members present. You are welcome to the committee. I'll invite the members to introduce themselves for purposes of record and Hansard, with the Deputy Speaker.
Good morning. I'm Gladys Boss, member for Uasin Gishu County and also Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. Karibu.
And my teacher.
And your teacher.
Majority.
Kamani Ishongwa, MP Kikuyu.
Upio Wendai, MP Ugunja.
Owen Baya, MP Kilifi North.
Rehab Mukami, County MP Nyeri.
Ferdinand Kevin Wanyonyi, Member of Parliament Kwanza, Trans Nzoia County of the Republic of Kenya.
George Gitonga Murugara, MP Tharaka, Tharaka Nithi County.
Good morning, Senate. Mheshimiwa Kosing, Pokot South, your neighbor, West Pokot County.
Abdul Rahim Daud, MP North Imenti, Meru County, and a member of this committee.
Honorable Mishimboko, MP Likoni, also a member of this committee. Nelson Koech, MP Belgut.
Morning, I'm Caleb Amisi, MP Saboti.
Didoraso, MP Saku.
Abdi Shurie, MP Balambala.
Stephen Mule, MP Matungulu.
Naisula Lesuda, MP Samburu West.
We also have our secretariat headed by the clerk of the National Assembly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Sarah Kioko, the acting clerk of the National Assembly. I have with me the director in charge of the Directorate of Appropriation, Audit and other select committees, and also the Deputy Director, Legal Services, plus quite a number of other members of staff who are assisting this committee. Thank you, Speaker.
We also have many fellow Kenyans from the media fraternity, whom you can see all over. Honorable Murkomen, we will engage you in 90 minutes. And in the 90 minutes, we will go through some preliminaries. After the preliminaries, I'll give you 10 minutes or less. The lesser, the better for the committee to tell us the story of your life up to where you're sitting.
Thank you.
Secondly, this is not an adversarial process. It's an engagement between you, the nominee, and a bipartisan committee of parliament that will engage to find out your suitability to occupy the office to which the president has nominated you as cabinet secretary. In the engagement, avoid the temptation to raise your voice or lose your fuse. Address every question through the chair, and members are similarly advised to address every question to you through the chair, and your answers the same way. Equally important, we want members, and they have been doing very well, to ask precise and concise questions that must elicit precise and concise answers to make things better. We always say, if you can't make your point in a minute, you are unlikely to make it in 30 minutes. We also want to ensure that time is properly kept, and members will engage you robustly on your past, on your present, your future, or what you want to do for this country. Now, before we get there, and before I give you the 10 minutes, there are a few things that we require from you. Your KRA compliance certificate, you have it?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Where you afforded to us, and you have the original copies. The Secretariat will look at the originals, compare with what you sent, and they'll release the originals back to you later.
Thank you.
The Higher Education Loans Board clearance, you have that?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Do you have the clearance from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
The certificate of conduct from the DCI?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Your national identity card, original?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Are you a dual citizen of Kenya and any other jurisdiction?
No, not at all.
You are not. Have you ever been charged and convicted of an offense in a court of law?
Not at all. Not even arrested, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Now, can you tell this committee your financial net worth and a segregation of what it is that...
Mr. Speaker, I am worth an estimated figure of 550 million Kenya shillings.
Made up of?
Made up of majorly, Mr. Speaker, properties in my house in Nairobi, another one in Eldoret, and land in Trans Nzoia, 3 parcels of land in Trans Nzoia, a parcel of land in Narok, and a parcel of land in Kajiado, and another parcel in Nairobi, apart from where I live. Cumulatively, I estimate, of course, with a bit of Mr. Speaker, some machinery, vehicles, and also I own a wheelbarrow, Mr. Speaker.
And a motorbike.
Unfortunately, I don't own a motorbike. Maybe because of the sector now, I should own one. Yes. But cumulatively, that comes to about 550 million shillings.
What are your current and anticipated sources of income?
Basically, I practice law under the firm of SMS Advocates LLP. That is one of the main sources of income. Of course, I've been earning salary from my job as assignment as a senator for Elgeyo Marakwet County, and I also have a bit of earning from farming. I do a bit of farming, Mr. Speaker, which actually, by virtue of that type of farming, increase the value of the land to what I gave you as cumulatively 550 million. So those are some of the source of income.
Excellent. Now I'll give you the 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, it's a great privilege and honor to have the opportunity to appear before this very august committee of the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, I will, interchange the same. In any case, you are still the Speaker. Mr. Chair, my name is Onesimus Kipchumba Murkomen, born on 12 March 1979 on the eastern sides of slopes of Cherangani Hills in a place famously known as Embobut. Actually born in Embobut Forest as a son of a squatter. Mr. Speaker, I am the son of Reverend Joanna and Mama Margaret. I am married. I have with one wife and 4 children. And Mr. Speaker, I went for my primary education, I went to Chawis Primary School, which is in Embobut. Like many of us here and others in the country, I went to school at a time in my area where I had to trek for at least 5 kilometers a day going and coming, so about 10 kilometers to access education. I also went later to Kapsiklai Primary School at the border of Elgeyo Marakwet and Trans Nzoia, whereafter I was admitted to the St. Joseph's High School, Kitale. Mr. Speaker, my dream then was to join St. Patrick's. That is the school I knew. And so when I tried to transfer to St. Patrick's High School, the school that time said I will have an opportunity in my second year, my Form 2. So I moved from St. Joseph's High School, Kitale, to St. Patrick's High School for my Form 2 to Form 4. It is at St. Patrick's High School that my leadership skills were honed. Mr. Speaker, St. Patrick's High School was among the few schools in the country then that allowed students to elect their leaders. As Speaker, the students of the school then entrusted me with one of the most sensitive dockets in the school to be in charge of the dining hall. Mr. Speaker, then at a very early age, I learned how to distribute resources and how to protect the weaker students, Mr. Speaker, knowing very well, the sometimes bullying would ensue, where you have a Form 1 fighting for his chance to get a better ratio of the food. And Mr. Speaker, perhaps that skill and knowledge that I learned at that very early in life will become instrumental in the job that I have been nominated to do, because it's about distribution of resources and equity. Mr. Speaker, after St. Patrick's High School, I was admitted to study law at the University of Nairobi. And Mr. Speaker, again at the University of Nairobi, I had the opportunity to be in various positions of leadership, one of which, Mr. Speaker, was to be the chair of the Kenya Law Student Society. Perhaps I'm told I'm the first person to be a chair of Kenya Law Student Society in my second year. And Mr. Speaker, from there, I also had an opportunity to be the chair of the Fellowship of Christian Unions National Student Executive Committee, which brought together all the members of the Fellowship of Christian Unions in the entire country, over 23 institutions at that point in time. Mr. Speaker, I had other responsibilities, including being an editor of the University of Nairobi Law Journal. And Mr. Speaker, if there is a moment in my life that I learned a lot about leadership and was properly trained about leadership, because people ask me, where did you come from? Why did you end up being a senator? It's because at that early age, from the time that I joined the University of Nairobi, I think I had exposure of many opportunities of training of leadership. So I went to the East Africa Uongozi Institute for training in leadership. Mr. Speaker, I also, together with other colleagues, Mr. Speaker, including Honorable Alice Waume, Honorable Patrick Mariro, Rachel Shebesh, we were in a founding class of leaders who were trained. I was still in the university, but I was in that class, trained to be future leaders, and I'm glad that dream became fulfilled in the fullness of time. So if you find me spend more time, speak about my adventure at the University of Nairobi, it's because I value it. It was very important in my formative years, including, Mr. Speaker, I was in the leadership of the SONU when SONU was disbanded, and I was the chair of KLSS that established a new constitution for the University of Nairobi students of SONU, and we put together the SONU. We restored SONU Parliament that used to exist in the yesteryears. Mr. Speaker, after University of Nairobi, and when I was still at the University of Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, I had the opportunity to work with the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission, then headed by Professor Yash Palgai as a program assistant, and I traveled many parts of this country to collect views. We were collecting and collating views for purpose of writing our constitution. Again, a very, very great opportunity, and I always thank Justice Pauline Nyamweya for giving a number of us who were students at that point in time an opportunity to serve in the constitution making process. Mr. Speaker, after my tenure, time at the University of Nairobi, I got an opportunity to do my pupillage with the firm of Muthoga Gaturu Advocates, and thereafter I got a scholarship, a World Bank scholarship, to train young African students, or young Africans actually, because focus was for Africans, on trade and investment negotiation. And therefore I was sent to University of Pretoria, where I graduated, Mr. Speaker, with magna cum laude. And Mr. Speaker, I graduated from there. I went again for an exchange program at the American University Washington College of Law, where I did another postgraduate degree on international legal studies. My time in Washington, Mr. Speaker, was very interesting. I had exposure of working with big think tanks at that point in time, Woodrow Wilson, Mr. Speaker, among others in DC. I also had an opportunity to work as a lobbyist. Lobbying in US is a formal trade where lobby firms are allowed to go to Parliament and represent their clients in legal positions on different issues. And so I had a chance to appear before Ways and Means Committee of Congress at a young age with that kind of exposure that I got. Mr. Speaker, when I left the US, interestingly, if you see my certificate for my second master's degree, although I left the university in 2007, I graduated in 2017. Interestingly, Mr. Speaker, you know I was a hustler. So when I went there, I had to pay my school fees, and I was unable to raise $10,000 to pay school fees then, which then later I procrastinated until I paid and went back to complete and graduate when I was a senator here in 2017. Mr. Speaker, when I left the American University to come back to my country, there were so many people who were enticing me with opportunities out of the country. But I knew my place and my dream was to participate in the task of nation building. And when I came here, I was employed at the Catholic University of East Africa as an assistant lecturer, Mr. Speaker, where I taught, among others, air and space law, which is again relevant to the, Mr. Speaker, the docket that I'm being nominated for. Thereafter, Mr. Speaker, I moved from Catholic University to Moi University, where again I taught various courses, Mr. Speaker. I am lucky to have taught a number of students, some of whom are in the National Assembly now, and some are my colleagues in the Senate. And Mr. Speaker, that was a great opportunity for me because apart from just teaching, I enjoyed the time I spent mentoring other students, both in matters leadership, but also in their career progression. Mr. Speaker, another very milestone, a very notable milestone in my life for me is that as we pursued to pass the 2010 Constitution, Mr. Speaker, I had a chance to participate in many initiatives that led to civic education. I was a firm supporter of the new Constitution. After the 2010 Constitution was passed, the former Prime Minister, Raila Odinga, nominated me to sit in the task force on devolved government. I served in that task force under, again, a very distinguished citizen of this country, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi. And that, Mr. Speaker, must have been my most notable contribution on matters devolution, because we came up with 6 laws on matters devolved governance. In 2013, Mr. Speaker, based on the experiences I had. Okay, Mr. Speaker, maybe I just conclude. I just wind up by saying from 2013, I was elected to be a senator by the people of Elgeyo Marakwet County. And in the Senate, I served in various capacities as a chair of devolution committee, represented Kenya in Pan-African Parliament, deputy majority leader, Mr. Speaker, in the second term, until I was unceremoniously bundled out of my position on 12th May 2020. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Mr. Speaker, the Almighty God, for the journey that I've traveled in public service. I want to thank my family, my wife, my children, for giving me the support that I need to do this, and the extended family, including my parents. And I want to thank the President for finding it fit, Mr. Speaker, to nominate me to this position of a Cabinet Secretary. I am forever grateful, and I hope this committee will approve my nomination so that I can enthusiastically, Mr. Speaker, serve the people of Kenya.
Thank you. At the end of the proceedings, I'll give you 3 minutes to say your last issues. I'll now invite members to field questions or make comments. I'll start with the Deputy Speaker.
Good morning, Council. Kipchumba Murkomen. And before I even start, I would like to under Standing Order number 90 to declare what they call declaration of interest, except that he will have to fight for himself. I have no bias towards him. I would like, Honorable Speaker, to let this meeting know that Kipchumba Murkomen is known to me. He was my student at the University of Nairobi. He was actually my top student at the University of Nairobi and represented Kenya in the international moot court competition in Washington, D.C., and came out as the top 100 lawyers in Kenya. And but even that said and done, I will not be biased. Honorable Chairman, if you allow me, and I will be completely without bias. And can I ask him some questions based on that? Thank you. Honorable Kipchumba Murkomen, as you know, Kenyans have very high standards for this new government. I would like to ask you what Kenyans have asked me to ask you. They're not my questions. If they were my questions, I would have asked you legal questions as your teacher. but I'm going to ask you ordinary questions. Kenyans are saying that the highway from Malaba to Mombasa, which is the most important channel for transporting cargo from Mombasa to Uganda, has very serious challenges. And if you want to improve it, how are you going to do it? The second one they're asking is the long queues sometimes extend up to 60 kilometers. The other thing Kenyans are asking is, yes, you built a beautiful expressway, but it's beyond the reach of ordinary Kenyans. If you have to do a one-way road trip, it's 600 shillings, which many Kenyans cannot afford. And lastly, the LAPSET project. They want to know, if we do confirm you as the minister or cabinet secretary for this position, what are you going to do for these things? Kenyans are concerned about that. Thank you.
You will record those questions. We'll be doing them in batches of 4-4. Kimani Ichung'wah, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Chair. Senator Murkomen, you've indicated that you work for SMS advocates. That's Sigai Murkomen and someone advocates. Singoi Murkomen and Sigai advocates. And I'm certain, Senator, you are watching yesterday's deliberations before this committee. And at one instance, when the Honorable Senator Kithure Kindiki was here, a question was put to him by the leader of minority on a payment that came from a company that was called Out of the Box, that was said to be proceeds of the NYS scandal, I think sometime back in 2015 or 2016. And Professor Kindiki contended that that payment was actually not to his law firm, but to your law firm. And you thereafter owed him some 500,000 shillings that you paid him by check. And he indeed indicated that it was not his business to know where the money came from. Now that you're here, Senator Murkomen, get out of the box and tell us whether that money were proceeds of crime, whether that money came from NYS, and what you are being paid for. Two, Senator Murkomen, you've been nominated into a very important docket, and I'm certain in the last 3-4 years, very many new road projects being commissioned, some that are not even in the budget, and that has occasioned a crisis within the road sector, roads construction sector, with very many contractors holding huge pending bills. And all their projects, I think almost 70 to 80% of the road in this country have stalled, including very critical highways like the ABC to Rironi Highway. I don't know, now that you've been nominated into this position, where you've applied your mind to what innovative ways you would have to employ as soon as you take office, if you are approved, to one, sort out the issue of pending bills, because it is negatively affecting the performance of the economy in terms of money circulating in the economy. And two, to ensure that all those stalled road projects are completed in a timely manner and done for the people of Kenya, to be able to derive value from the money that has already been invested in those roads. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
One day.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be very brief. Senator Murkomen, as an officer of the court, and a distinguished one for that matter, your trust and faith in the justice system is very important. You will recall, in the wake of the controversy around Aror and Kimware dams, you were quoted just before the DPP undertook some prosecutions. You were quoted as having described the whole issue as a charade. Okay? I just want to find out from you if you still hold the same view, in view of the fact that thereafter a task force was formed to undertake some inquiry into this matter. A task force headed by PS Professor Maringa. And if at all you came to, if at all you read the report of that task force, because personally I tried looking for it, I couldn't lay my hands on it here as chair of PAC. Yeah, that is one. Two is on the LAPSSET issue. The LAPSSET Corridor Development Authority was supposed to serve as a special purpose vehicle for the implementation of the LAPSSET Corridor project. So how will you ensure that LAPSSET Development Authority gets all the necessary powers and capacity to accomplish the assignments as per the law establishing it? That is very important. But secondly, why can there be a specific budget channeled directly to, domiciled at LAPSSET Authority for implementing these program components? Thank you.
Thank you. Owen.
Thank you, Chair and Speaker. Senator Murkomen, I have nothing actually to declare interest on. I want to you to address yourself to the question of open sky policy, and looking at Mombasa, which is actually an international airport by its name, but in operations it has become more of a domestic airport. We used to have 67 charter flights that promoted tourism in the area, but now we only have 2 remaining. We also used to have Qatar Airways fly to Mombasa, Ethiopian Airways, and many other international flights would land in Mombasa, and it promoted the tourism in that area. But there has been a deliberate policy called the protectionist policy on Kenya Airways, protecting Kenya Airways, and therefore it has shut off all these other airlines, and it has closed the airspace only for Kenya Airways, turning Mombasa into more of a domestic airport, same as Malindi. This has hurt tourism, and those people that come from the tourism areas, especially at the coast, are suffering, not because of the Minister of Tourism, but because of the Minister of Transport, because they have done an injustice in terms of the airspace. What will be your policy towards opening up the airspace to ensure that we have direct flights from London, from Frankfurt, from Milan, so that we can promote tourism? Because your ministry, the ministry you've been nominated to, cuts across other ministries as a supporter, as it supports in terms of infrastructure. That is one. Mr. Speaker, the people of Malindi have also asked me to ask this question. The airport in Malindi has always been said to be expanded, and actually Kenya Airports Authority is said to have taken over land from people and have promised to pay. Those people are living in squalor. They're living as very poor people because their land has been taken. They are not allowed to do any development on the land, and yet Kenya Airports Authority has not paid them up to this point, and it has taken many, many years. While the airport is lagging behind because nothing is happening and it is killing tourism, the people are living in poverty because they have not been paid their money. What would you do when you are approved as minister in that area? I thank you.
You deal with those 4?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, let me first deal with the question of Senator Kimani Ichung'wah, so that I come back to my teacher, because
I've never been a senator.
No, sorry. Honorable Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah. There was a senator called Kimani Wamatangi. So that creates that confusion. So, Speaker, let me first deal with the question of the out-of-the-box, Mr. Speaker, and the question of mentioning of SMS advocates. It is true, Mr. Speaker, that sometime in 2016, the Committee on Public Accounts Commission committee investigating the NYS saga came to the conclusion that, Mr. Speaker, a client known as Out of the Box Company Limited was paid by was part of the companies that were suspected to have participated in the NYS scandal. Although, Mr. Speaker, the evidence that was before the committee indicated that that company was contracted by the planning ministry and not the NYS. But be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, the SMS advocates that were the lawyers for the Out of the Box handled a transaction that Out of the Box Limited purchased a property via SMS advocates. Mr. Speaker, the committee received a representation from both parties. And although, Mr. Speaker, as you know, you are a lawyer of a senior lawyer, actually, you and your deputy, Mr. Speaker, very senior, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, of high repute. When we receive resources from clients to purchase a property, there is no legal requirement to go and ask them, how did you earn them? Some get them by, Mr. Speaker, collecting, Mr. Speaker, offering in charge. Others by selling whatever they sell, Mr. Speaker. Others by employment they have. But once money comes from the account to the law firm's responsibility is just to ensure that you use them prudently to carry out the transaction that the client requested. The law firm did so. And despite that representation, the committee went ahead and made adverse recommendations against the SMS advocates. Aggrieved, the law firm went to court, Mr. Speaker, in 2017. And Mr. Speaker, on April 2020, the court ordered as follows, Mr. Speaker, that an order of certiorari is issued to bring into this court and quash recommendations 12 and 13, which were adverse on the SMS advocates, of the report of Public Accounts Committee inquiring into the happening of NYS, violate petitioners' rights guaranteed by the Article 47 of the Constitution of Kenya. So, Mr. Speaker, as a senior lawyer, you know, once the court has quashed those proceedings, they are as though they never happened. And so, Mr. Speaker, to me, that's no longer an issue. That matter has been rested by the decision of the court. And anyone reading parliamentary report, a particular recommendation of the committee, paragraph 12 and 13, should now be aware that that has been quashed by the court. And that now leaves me, Mr. Speaker, to deal with the policy issues. Mr. Speaker, I want to collapse some of the questions that have been asked sector-wide. My teacher has asked, Honorable Sholei, Deputy Speaker, has asked a very important question about congestion of the Northern Corridor Road. And Mr. Speaker, particularly at the Malaba border, where we have a problem of congestion insofar as clearance is concerned. The problem in Malaba border is twofold, Mr. Speaker. One is the technology used by KRA to be able to clear truckers. Sometimes they have been facing challenges, and as a result of that technology being used, Mr. Speaker, sometimes even the challenge is about internet availability. And Mr. Speaker, we will work with the relevant Ministry of Finance and the Kenya Revenue Authority to ensure that they are able to put in place modern technology that is expedited. The other issue is because of the parking. The parking area along that border is, Mr. Speaker, congested. We are inviting the county government of Busia to, Mr. Speaker, invest in providing or through PPP or direct even as a county to raise revenue for the county, just the way Nairobi County has parking for vehicles, they can create a good parking for the lorries so that it can raise more revenue for the county and supplement
Yes, Ferdinand, what's the problem?
There's no problem, Mr. Speaker, but I just wonder this technology that the nominee is talking about. I want to know because
Mr. Speaker,
that area is really congested. What do you mean by technology? Which technology are these?
Mr. Speaker, the clearance of goods is based on internet system, okay, where you have to have proper functioning internet for you to be able to use the machines that KRA is using. The report I have from my inquiry is that that has been sometimes the cause of delay, either the failure of the system itself they're using or the absence of proper and strong network that can facilitate the KRA itself to do the clearance a bit more faster. So we're saying this will be a collaborative effort, Mr. Speaker, on our part. Of course, this is not also something to be done by the government of Kenya alone. We have a responsibility to deal with the one-stop border principle. If you see that problem used to be Namanga, but those of you who have gone to Arusha of late, infrastructure development along Namanga by both the government of Kenya and the government of Tanzania, it has facilitated quick and fast movement of goods, because our responsibility as an institution of transport is trade facilitation, and we must be able to provide structures that will make sure that we facilitate trade a bit faster. Mr. Speaker, I tie that issue then to the other question of there is a congestion between and conversations. Members of this Augusta House are aware in the National Assembly and also the Senate of the conversation around dualling, Mr. Speaker, of the road from Mombasa to Malaba. And considering the current stage and situation of our finances, Mr. Speaker, this can never be achieved by investing our taxes on the road. Mr. Speaker, we don't even have enough money to be able to do proper dualling of the road from Mombasa to Malaba. However, innovatively, working with this, with Parliament and the relevant committee of Parliament and Parliament as a whole, Mr. Speaker, we need to make sure that we strengthen the framework of public-private partnership so that we can entice, Mr. Speaker, the private sector to invest on the road. All over the world, if you've gone to many of the countries in the world where they have better infrastructure, they have been able to harness resources from their local investors to invest in the road and then put in place a tolling policy. I know, Honorable Sholay asked the question of expressway, and I want to use that as an example. By the way, Mr. Speaker, it is my strong belief, and having consulted widely, that tolling is not an extra charge, it's a saving. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the expressway alone, you will find that, Mr. Speaker, it takes a shorter time for you to move for 27 kilometers from one end to the other, meaning, therefore, that you've saved time. A time that sometimes would be 3 hours. So if you are earning money, for example, us who are here, maybe $1 million a month, and you subdivide it to the time that you to the hour, every hour, you will realize that the cost of staying at Mombasa Road for 3 hours will come to a certain figure. And that is a saving in the first place when it's reduced to about 20 minutes. But, Mr. Speaker, also most importantly, you save on fuel. Mr. Speaker, you save a lot on fuel. Now, this should be our policy. And I think this is the proposal I'm going to make if I am approved by this House. We should be able to take our roads, and let me speak now to all of them so that no one will need to answer the other places. We should be able to identify our high-density roads and then put in place a tolling policy with a fee that is charged that is commensurate, Mr. Speaker, to the saving that the motorist will get. Now, if you say the road from Mombasa to Nairobi to Malaba, I propose that we dual the road, we attract investors, and of first priority should be local investors. Local investors means our pension fund, our banks, Mr. Speaker, and our, Mr. Speaker, Kenyans who want to invest of whatever nature, including it to reach a stage where perhaps the Kenya National Highway is listed in the stock exchange so that every Kenyan has a share of that investment that has been put on the road. If that is done, Mr. Speaker, we will be able to save time, we will be able to do better roads. Let me give you the last example. If today you are going to Rongai in the outskirts of Nairobi, at the peak hour, at about 4 p.m., it will take you about 3 hours to go to Rongai. By the time you are reaching Kiseria, it's 3.5 hours. By the time, Mr. Speaker, you reach there and you are a parent, CBC is waiting for you, Mr. Speaker. You have had road rage on the way, quarreling with people, matatus are jumping on pavements. You've lost 3 hours. You've lost, Mr. Speaker, fuel that perhaps if quantified will be about 500 shillings, let's to say the least. We are telling you, calculate the time that we are saving for you, calculate the resources that you are going to spend on fuel, let us dual the road, let's toll it. Instead of paying 500, which you are wasting on the fuel, we will save for you, you pay about 200 shillings. Then the others are saving. So the message I should go to Kenyans is that dualing and tolling roads is not an extra charge, it's a saving. For as long as for every road that is tolled, the person in charge of the road must guarantee that the movement of persons shall be within a given period of time. So that then if the road becomes busy like Thika Road, you can either expand or put in place traffic management that will ensure that people will move faster. I'm a bit more passionate on this, Mr. Speaker. Sorry, maybe I took a longer time. Mr. Speaker, the question of also tolling roads, let me just speak to it. In Nairobi here, using Southern Bypass, Eastern Bypass, Northern Bypass, Expressway, and all these other places. Mr. Speaker, the person in Lokichar or somebody in Hola, Mr. Speaker, most of them have not even seen good roads. Some saw the roads just the other day, and they're all highways. What will tolling do? If we raise enough revenue to maintain this infrastructure, the big infrastructures that we are going to develop, we can then save the other money from road maintenance levy and other sources of revenue to go and construct roads in other parts of the country. My responsibility to ensure that we eliminate mwisho wa lamis across the country so that Kenyans progressively know that roads that are connecting county to county will be tarmacked. Roads will be also distributed equitably to areas. No child at this point in time, Mr. Speaker, should travel to another constituent in that regard. Mr. Speaker, on the LAPSET, on the expressway last, just imagine this, Mr. Speaker, and I want to say the initial price was 60 billion, inflation or whatever, it's 78 billion. Kenyans should know that that expressway was not built using public money, it was private money. The only thing is that the concession is 30 years, okay, it's given to 30 years. I'm told today the private investor is the cars that are passing through the expressway now are 45,000, meaning that in 3 months they have reached 45,000. If it moves to 200,000 a day, that investor will get 7 billion a year. If it was a pension fund, they would know that in 10 years this benefit will recoup to the pension fund and benefit the country. So I want us to see positively the private investment on our roads as one way also of creating employment and growing wealth.
Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I'm almost done.
Chair, not to interrupt the Senator, and I see his passion in the tolling of roads. But Speaker, maybe you could also clarify as he answers my earlier question on the pending bills and everything else I asked. Are you also aware that those roads, as much as they are tolled, they're also public assets because they are built on public land?
Correct.
And I see you are more encouraging more of investment to benefit the investors who would be investing on those roads. But what of the ordinary Kenyan taxpayer? Because, for instance, let me use the expressway. Mm-hmm. If they collect so much money within a shorter period, we should be looking at concessions that are less years.
Correct.
And also the cost of building those toll roads, as you say, is also a matter. Is it a matter that is of concern to you as the incoming minister, or are we going to see an escalation of costs for tolled roads, because if they were cheaper, then the concessions would be lower, and these assets will revert back to the public within a shorter period to benefit the people of Kenya, not just investors. I don't know whether the Chinese investors or the Chinese in quotes are more worthy of those investments than the Kenyan people.
I totally agree with the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, Mr. Speaker. The negotiation of the expressway, there were flaws. Some of the flaws were basically, okay, the Kenyan government decided that they are not going to take the risk just in case the investor is not going to meet his investment targets. But a proper calculation would have shown that in the fullness of time, that risk will not be there. And that's why I'm saying we must change from the model of the expressway, because the expressway now, the investor took his risk, but investor is taking a greater benefit in the long run. Number two is a public asset. We gave them the land that they are using to construct the road. That's not just enough, that also the other road, which is another problem we'll come to deal later with, is, Mr. Speaker, the road below has been destroyed and has been left, Mr. Speaker, in a more dilapidated stage. Again, there was a fund that was supposed to be given by the government of Kenya to ensure that the roads are restored, because the utility, the people who are in charge of the utilities, the water, the internet and so forth, Mr. Speaker, in the process of relocating those utilities, it messed up the road. I really fear that if it rains soon, we'll have a serious problem of flooding in Imara Daima and those areas, and corrective measures are being worked out by Kenya National Highway Authority to deal with that issue. On the question of financing, again, Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah has raised a very important issue. In the short term, Mr. Speaker, we have a problem. Let me just say this: we have a problem. We are inheriting. This administration is inheriting nearly 140 billion shillings in the infrastructure sector, particularly the roads. Mr. Speaker, the reason why the roads have stalled is because we are unable to pay the contractors. And Mr. Speaker, the money to pay the contractors is not there, because we have committed that money to other sectors, Mr. Speaker, or maybe we chewed more than we could, we bit more than we could chew, Mr. Speaker. And so the problem here is that we are proposing, and the government of Kenya is proposing in its manifesto, that, Mr. Speaker, we will do securitization, but more importantly, and I think quickly, Mr. Speaker, we will use the road maintenance levy to, Mr. Speaker, guarantee a one-off, Mr. Speaker, a bond, infrastructure bond, that should be raised, pay off all the pending bills, and make sure that, in line with the plans we give the people of Kenya, we make sure that we complete the roads so that we achieve the equity we are talking about. We also want to safeguard, Mr. Speaker, this Parliament passed in the last, towards the end of Parliament, they passed a law to take more of the road maintenance levy to development. I think those are things we will sit down to review, because we must also, as we construct the roads, we must maintain. And let me use that opportunity, Honorable Kimani, to answer also the question of annuity. The annuity program, Mr. Speaker, was very unfortunate. The most unfortunate program that we ever implemented. The road from Ngong to Kiserian to Isinya, Kajiado there, Mr. Speaker, is 91 kilometers. Through annuity program, we are paying 28 billion, Mr. Speaker, to construct 91 kilometers. Mr. Speaker, this is ridiculous, because that road constructed conventionally, even with 80 million a kilometer, we would have used only 7 to 8 billion. It costs 500,000 shillings to maintain a road every year per kilometer. If you calculate for better to borrow than to engage resources in this annuity program. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, the last thing I was asked, I can see my time is far much spent, is that the issue of Aurora and Kimwarer, a very good question from my colleague. Mr. Speaker, I still believe that Aurora and Kimwarer was charges and stopping of the projects was politically motivated. And when we called the Speaker, P.S. Maringa to the committee of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if you were there at that time, but he was fumbling and eventually whispered to me and said, you know, I was told. So, Mr. Speaker, the era of I was told should come to an end. And the era of stopping projects because you don't like the person who lives in that area or comes from that county. I, Mr. Speaker, will promise this committee that if I am elected, if I am approved by this committee to become the CS Roads, Transport and Public Works, I can assure you I will work for Kenyans to